John Anderson lived alone. He was a retired teacher. His small New York apartment held only books. Old lesson plans filled his shelves. He had no family. He had no friends. Then came the hospital. Doctors found late-stage lung cancer. John felt heavier than ever. He wore an old brown sweater. His grey pants hung loose. He walked slowly. Every step felt like a memory. Michael Johnson lived differently. He worked on Wall Street, fast cars, big houses, many parties. But his family left him. His children stayed away. Now heart problems brought him here. Michael still looked perfect. His silver hair stayed neat. He wore fine suits, even in bed. One day they met in the hallway. John pushed his IV stand. Click, clack, click. Michael sat in a wheelchair. A nurse pushed him. Their eyes met, just for a second. Then both looked away. Strangers. In the waiting room they sat together. Silence grew thick. John stared at his hands. Thin. Shaking. Michael watched the city through the window. Tall buildings. Busy people. His life was out there. But he was in here. Michael coughed loudly. John shrank smaller. The doctor called John first. "Your cancer's spread," the doctor said softly. "Maybe 6 months left." John nodded. No tears, just another ending. Michael went in next. "Your heart is too weak," the doctor told him. "No surgery can fix it. Maybe 3 months." Michael's mouth twitched. Then a tired smile. Life's cruel joke. Back in the waiting room, air felt different. Michael sighed. "Got my death sentence too." John looked up. For the first time he really saw Michael. A sad understanding passed between them. John nodded slowly. Same train, different cars. Later, Michael lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. 6 months, 3 months. What's the difference? The end is the same. But then, an idea sparked. He walked to John's room, eyes bright, voice firm. "John," he said, "we're both dying, but we're not dead yet." John looked confused. "Let's make a list." Michael's hands moved excitedly. "Things we always wanted to do, big things, small things. Let's do them together." John frowned. "A list? I never made wishes." "Exactly." Michael leaned forward. "Now is the time, before it's never." He saw John's fear and his own hope. John was quiet. Then a tiny nod. "Okay, let's try." Michael smiled wide. A real smile. He patted John's shoulder, warm, strong. "Tomorrow we start the list. We have today. That is enough." John tried to smile back. It felt strange, but good. A small warmth grew in his chest. Hope. Morning sun warmed John's bed sheets. He and Michael sat with a notebook. Michael spoke first. "Time for wishes. Write anything. Big, small, crazy." John picked up the pen. Slowly he wrote, "Skydiving." Michael raised an eyebrow. "Jumping from a plane. I like it." He took the pen. "Watch a sunrise." John almost smiled. "Quiet, beautiful, yes." The pen moved between them. "Reconcile with family. Try new food. See another country." Each word felt like hope. "Start easy," Michael said. "Doctors won't notice. Let's try new food." John nodded. "A Thai place, downtown." They changed clothes quietly, watched for nurses, slipped out like shadows. Outside the city buzzed. Noise, people, life. John breathed deep. "Feels different," Michael grinned. "Feels alive." The restaurant smelled strange, sweet, spicy, new. "Welcome," a server smiled. She led them to a window seat. John opened the menu. So many words. Michael leaned close. "Never ate Thai. What's good?" John pointed. "Curry, soup. They say spicy." Michael laughed. "We jump from planes. We can handle spice." Food came, bright colors. Steam rose. John tasted the curry. Fire hit his tongue. He coughed, then smiled. Hot, but good. Michael sipped the soup. Sour, spicy, tastes like adventure. Food is adventure without wings, John said softly. Between bites, walls fell. John spoke first, voice low. Long ago, I loved someone. I was scared. I waited. She left. He stared at his plate, always alone. Michael pushed his soup aside. I had everything, cars, houses, parties. His smile faded. But my wife, gone. My kids, gone. He touched his suit sleeve. Success filled my bank, but emptied my home. Silence. Then Michael looked at John. Work was my world. Wrong world. John wiped his eye. I chased small things, forgot the big ones. We traded spice for truth, Michael whispered. The server cleared empty plates. John looked at their list. Skydiving next? Michael nodded. First we watch the sunrise. Tomorrow. John smiled. A real one this time. They walked back to the hospital. Slower now. Shoulders almost touching. The food was gone. But something else grew. Friendship. Stronger than sickness. One wish done. Many to go. John and Michael felt closer. Stronger. They promised. One wish every week. Not just for fun. For life. Wish. Skydiving. The small plane waited. Loud. Scary. John looked up. His hands shook. Sure about this? John asked. Michael grinned. It's on the list. We're dying, not dead. Let's fly. They put on suits. Learned fast. Up, up, up. The plane went. John gripped Michael's arm. Hard. Breathe, Michael said. His own eyes were wide. The door opened. Wind screamed. The instructor pointed down. 3, 2, 1, jump! They fell, fast. Wind roared in their ears. Earth rushed up. For a moment they were free, truly free. Parachutes opened, slow, quiet. They floated down, landed soft. John laughed, loud and real. I felt alive! Michael clapped his back. The world looks different from above. Wish, sunrise. Days later, a quiet beach. Dark sky, cold sand. They waited. Never did this, Michael whispered. Too busy climbing. Forgot to look up. John nodded. Simple things, best things. Light crept in. Pink, orange, gold. The sun rose. Slow. Beautiful. Waves whispered. Worth waiting for, John said, eyes wet. This, Michael breathed, is living. The hardest wish. Family. Back in the hospital room. The list lay open. One line stared back. Reconcile with family. Michael looked at a photo. His son, young, smiling. I need to find him. John found an old address. His sister, lost years. He picked up the phone, hand shaking. Ring, ring, ring. A woman's voice. Hello. John's breath caught. Hello, it's John, your brother. Silence, long silence. Then, John, is it really you? Tears filled John's eyes. Yes, I miss you. Can we talk? More silence. Hope felt fragile, like glass. Okay, John, okay, let's meet. John put the phone down, shaky, scared, but hopeful. Michael watched him. Bravest jump yet, John. John nodded. Fear is loud, but regret? Louder. Michael stood at his son's door, heart pounding. John's hand rested on his shoulder. Just breathe. First step. The door opened. James stood there, eyes cold. Dad! His voice was ice. Inside, silence screamed. Michael spoke first. I failed you. Chose work over family. I'm sorry. James's fists clenched. My graduation. Empty chair. Mom's funeral. Late. I can't undo it, Michael whispered. But I want to try. Please. John watched. Steady. Slowly James sighed. Remember teaching me to ride a bike? Michael smiled. You crashed into Mrs. Riley's roses. James almost laughed. She yelled for weeks. The ice cracked. Days later, a family party. Noise, laughter, warmth. James handed Michael a drink. Glad you came. Tears filled Michael's eyes. Thank you for this chance. James nodded. Sorry doesn't erase years. But it starts now. John waited in the cafe, twisting his napkin. She won't come. Susan walked in, grey hair, guarded eyes. "Susan, you came," John breathed. She sat stiffly. "Why now?" "After 20 silent years." "I was wrong," John said. "Scared, selfish. I miss my sister." Susan stared at her coffee. "Hurt doesn't vanish, John. I need time." The meeting ended, cold, empty. John's hopes shattered. Back at the hospital, John sat frozen. Michael pushed paper toward him. "Write. Speak your heart." John wrote all night. "Remember our treehouse. I stole your doll. You cried. I never apologized. I am now. Please, don't let this be the end." 3 days later, a reply. "Saturday, 10 a.m. Same cafe. Bring treehouse photos. Susan." John held the letter. Tears fell. Some doors open slow, but they open. Final wish, Europe, Paris. The Eiffel Tower stretched high. John gazed down. "Never dreamed I'd see this." Michael grinned. "We're not waiting for dreams anymore. We're catching them." Rome. The Colosseum's ancient stones whispered history. Venice, gondolas gliding, water lapping, peace. Amsterdam. Quiet canals, twilight skies. One evening, beside a canal, John spoke softly. "Michael, I thought life was about big things, success, adventures." Michael watched the water. "Me too. But this," John touched his heart. "Family, forgiveness, this sunset with a friend." Michael nodded. "Home isn't a place, it's moments like this." They sat shoulder to shoulder. No more words needed. Europe felt like a dream. But back in New York, John grew weaker. Fast. He returned to the hospital. Breathing became hard. Michael never left his side. "Stay with me, friend. You're stronger than this." John tried to smile, but his eyes were tired. So tired. Then Susan came, every day. Her coldness melted. One afternoon she took John's thin hand. "I'm glad we found each other," she whispered. Tears shone. John's voice was a scratch. "I'm sorry, Susan, for all the lost years." Susan kissed his forehead. "No more sorries, just now." John closed his eyes. Peace, warm and quiet, filled him. Michael watched. His own heart was sick. But he stayed. They talked about Paris sunsets, skydiving winds, that spicy soup. Michael opened their notebook. "Our story," he said, pen ready. "It should help others. Show them what matters." John touched the page. "You made my ending beautiful, Michael." Morning light streamed in, software golden. John's breathing slowed. Slowed. Stopped. A small smile stayed on his lips. Michael held his friend's hand, tight, then gentle. Grief ached, but gratitude held him up. Days later, Michael felt his own body fading. No fear, only calm. He finished the notebook, their whole journey, the list, the jumps, the sunrises, the forgiveness. He gave it to Susan. "Our story, share it, please." Susan hugged him. "It will change lives, Michael, I promise." That night, Michael lay back, quiet. He thought of John, laughing as they fell through clouds. He thought of James, holding his hand at the family BBQ. He thought of Susan, reading John's letter by the window. "Little moments," he whispered. "That's where life hides." His eyes closed, his heart rested.